560 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So there's this big confab with congressional leaders and Biden at the White House to talk about the border and the, sort of like the Rashomon effect, a bunch of eyewitnesses that have very different reviews of what transpired in that meeting. Some suggesting that Biden realizes that there's a crisis despite saying there isn't a crisis, and he is open to making policy changes. And others saying, well, here's a Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader Pagliacci.
We said we have to do both. There were a couple of people in the room who said, let's do border first. We said we have to do both together.
And by both, he means we have to throw money at the border as well as throwing money at Ukraine. We won't just throw money at the border. Well, I think the House Republicans understand, or should at this point, that throwing money at the border is not the issue. It is the policies as memorialized in H.R. 2 that need to be changed before you have a conversation about anything else, it would seem to me. Some Republicans not getting the message. Again, we talked about this a bit earlier, but I want to get our next guest's comment on it. This is the Dignity Act, a legislation sponsored by Republican Representative Maria Gonzalez and Democrat Rep. Hillary Scholten, the former of Florida, the latter of Michigan. They were on with Brett Baer yesterday discussing it, and this despite that the House Republican caucus has already moved H.R. 2. Maria Gonzalez apparently thinks that this is sort of a bigger, better deal that should be under consideration.
Act $25 billion to secure the border and catch and release, expedite asylum processing, criminal background checks, restitution, mandatory E-Verify for employment, year-round H-2A farm ranch worker visas. Congresswoman Salazar, why is this important, and how does it track differently than what's happening up there?
It's very important because it's the only bill in Congress that is bipartisan, and not only that, it accomplishes exactly what the country needs: to seal the border, secure the border. And once that is done, once that border is secured, then we look back and we give some type of dignity to those people who have been here for more than 5 years, who are contributing with your economy. Like my colleague said, dignity is not an immigration reform law. This is a national security, it's an economic bill, because you know that the business sector is saying we need hands. Those hands are here. We just need to legalize them. I'm not talking about citizenship. I'm talking about dignity, not amnesty. Dignity.
This bill has...
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Tom Homan, former acting ICE Director. Tom, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Dignity, not amnesty. Are you buying that?
No, she's not very smart, obviously, because when you reward illegal behavior, every time you talk about amnesty, it drives more people to come. When you reward illegal behavior, it drives more people to come. Why do you think only the people that are ordered removed by the immigration judge, if they're not in custody, why does only 6% leave? Because they know if they hide out long enough, they're going to get something. They're going to get amnesty. They're going to get DACA. We need to stop that. If people get ordered removal, they need to leave. So, look, we need to secure the border, absolutely. But you don't reward illegal behavior. We keep going through the same vicious cycle every few years, and I guarantee the more attention they get on this dignity thing, the more they're going to come because they want to be a part of it. They're going to say, well, I've been here for 7 years. And they'll go to some farm, they'll get a letter saying they worked on that farm for the last 7 years. We dealt with this in 1986 after IRCA. She's doing it on the same road. So, no, secure the border. There should be no compromise in that. H.R. 2 would be a game changer because most of it contains the Trump policies. I help write some of that. H.R. 2 will work. H.R. 2 will fix the border. That's what we need to stick to. And the House passed that, and there was bipartisan support. Not as much as we wanted, but you know what? It's going to work. And there's a lot of Democrat mayors and governors want to see it fixed. So I say we go over H.R. 2.
And the effort by Republicans, some Republicans, certainly Democrats in both chambers, Say, we'll give you $12 billion. We'll give you $25 billion. Is the money that's being thrown around, is that of any interest to you at this stage?
It's not a money issue. It's a policy issue. You said it earlier. I think that's your first statement you made. You're exactly on point. This is a policy issue. You don't need more Border Patrol agents. You don't need more technology. Look, President Trump secured the border at the highest level ever in history of this nation, and we did it through policy. If they would put the Remain in Mexico program back in and third safe country agreements with the Central American countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, they would fix 85% of this problem tomorrow. In the highest courts in the land, it says the Remain in Mexico program was legal. People are still claiming asylum. They're going to wait in Mexico. And why is that important? Because if you look at immigration court data over the last decade, 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border never get relief in the U.S. courts because they simply don't qualify for asylum. And what happens to that 9 out of 10 that gets order removed? They don't leave unless they're in detention, and this administration is releasing everybody. So bottom line is, Remain in Mexico was a game changer. People are still claim asylum, but they're not going to be allowed to be a fugitive of the United States when they lose their case. It worked. We proved it worked. If they want to secure the border, that's what they do. It doesn't cost another dollar.
Well, how did you interpret this open negotiation between the Mexican president, AMLO, and Biden about Mexican help and stopping the flow to the southern border? And in response to a commitment to help, AMLO wants $20 billion for Latin America. He wants to end the blockade in Cuba. He wants to end the sanctions in Venezuela. He wants 10 million Hispanics from various countries in the country right now to be given permanent legal status. I mean, that's a pretty bold negotiation. That's a pretty bold ask by the Mexican president. And I just, when we were talking about it before, I'm just left wondering, what does he know about President Biden and his actual position and what he is and is not willing to do to make such a bold demand?
Well, AMLO knows that we got a weak administration. We got a weak president. We got a weak secretary. And we got a weak Secretary of State with Blinken. He's calling the shots. And that's pretty pathetic because under President Trump, he didn't ask Mexico to help. He told them to help. He says, you're going to put military in the southern northern border. You're going to participate in the third safe country agreements. You're going to host the Remain in Mexico program. And if you don't, I'm going to tear the hell out of you. And they did it. Central American countries on the third safe country agreement, he called them and said, I want you to be a part of it. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, well, look, I'm going to take every dollar of international aid away that I give you guys millions of dollars every year. Guess what? Within 48 hours, they came to the table. President Trump was a game changer. This administration has given Mexico millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to help stem the flow, and it's like they're being held hostage. President Trump, when President Trump asked me that question, what we have done in the past, Tom, he said, well, we send millions of dollars down there to create opportunity zones so people don't have to leave their countries and create jobs down there. And how's the success of that, Tom? It doesn't work. The money doesn't get where it needs to get. The countries are corrupt. It just aligns at pockets of politicians. He says, well, I'm not going to give them a single dollar. I'm going to take money away. And that's what he did, and they came to the table. It didn't cost them a dime. That shows a powerful president versus a weak president.
And now that during a time when the U.S. needs more, detention beds and things like this, tell us how Biden is stripping ICE of their resources.
Oh, they're shutting down ICE detention beds all the time. There's a facility in Northern California. It's a 2,000-bed facility, state-of-the-art facility. They got 8 people there. 8. Because they're trying to shut it down. They've shut down 3 or 4 other facilities. So while now they're asking for more money for detention, at the same time they have thousands of empty ICE beds. Again, it's a shell game. They're asking for more money for detention to make it sound like they're going to do something, but that money will be earmarked for NGOs to put them on airplanes and send them to the city of their choice, put them in a hotel room at $500 a night, feed them 3 meals a day with free medical care. At the same time, the beds in ICE cost about $127 a night, 24/7 medical, 3 squares a day, but they'd much rather have them not in detention. And why is that? Because of what I just told you. If they're not in detention, they're not going to leave when they get an order removal. That is what they're doing.
Yesterday, you were in a hearing, congressional House committee hearing, talking about a number of issues related to the border, of course, but one of them was fentanyl trafficking. And this is a big issue since last couple of years, we've had a record number of overdoses in this country. And there seemed to be a bit of an argument about how fentanyl is getting into this country whether it's coming through ports of entry or it's coming through all of the spots along our southern border that are largely unguarded, at least some of the time. Can you just address that in terms of how the traffickers work, the drug traffickers, as well as the human traffickers?
Look, the Dems want to claim that most of the fentanyl comes through the port of entry. Why do they want to do that? Because they don't want the blame put on them that they're not securing the border. The border's wide open, so the fentanyl's coming across, killed 112,000 Americans. It's much better for them to say it's coming through the port of entry where we're fully staffed and we're seizing it. It's just ridiculous argument. I've did this for over 30 years. The criminal cartel is going to use the route of least resistance. Do you think they're going to send every ounce of fentanyl to a port of entry when they know every vehicle is going to be stopped, every license plate is going to be run, every driver is going to be spoken to, and depending on those responses, depending on the CBP targeting system, they're going to secondary vehicle. So, and it's ridiculous they say it all comes through the port of entry. Now, I'll say one thing. Most of it seized at a port of entry. Why? Because they're fully staffed. But between the port of entries right now, people need to understand some of the sectors in the last half a year, there are several sectors on the southwest border, Border Patrol sectors, there hasn't been a single Border Patrol agent on patrol because they're all busy making baby formula, changing diapers, making hospital runs, taking people to the airports. Not a single agent within hundreds of miles. And they're going to want to try to convince the American people, well, there's no fentanyl coming through there. It is a ridiculous, nonsensical argument. I'm telling you, I've done this for 30 years. Fentanyl is coming between the port of entry because the Border Patrol is overwhelmed with this humanitarian issue, so there's wide open gaps. It's also coming maritime. Coast Guard seizing record amounts of it because they're trying to go around the ports of entry and bring it into the water. So the argument yesterday was they kept saying, well, most of it's come through the port of entry, and I kept telling them, no, most of it's seized at a port of entry because the vehicles are stopped. You can't sit there and tell me you know what's happening between the port of entry because no one's there.
And so the same thing, I assume, with human traffickers. I mean, you talk about hundreds of miles of unguarded territory that's apparently navigable between ports of entry. So that's where they operate, too, path of least resistance?
Absolutely. And that's why we have just shy of 2 million known gotaways now. Known gotaways. People are caught in video, drone traffic, central traffic. Got a video of them, got an image, but they weren't arrested because Border Patrol's, again, too busy making baby formula and changing diapers and all that stuff. So, 1.9 million gotaways.
Well, what about the unaccompanied minors? I mean, one day last December, there were 390 children that were unaccompanied minors. What happens with them? Where do they go?
We're at 440,000 now, and they go to ORR. ORR will release them to so-called vetted sponsors, sometimes relatives, many times not. But here's the issue with that. Secretary Becerra, the head of HHS, testified. No, he didn't. He gave a speech the other day. He was bragging about how quick they release these kids. They're not in custody very long. We release them quick as possible. Okay, well, congratulations. You lost 100,000 of them. As of 6 months ago, they lost track of 85,000. Now we're over 100,000 because they released people to sponsors that weren't vetted properly. We found some of these children working midnight shift in meat packing plants, cleaning up entrails. We found them in forced labor situations. We found them in indentured servitude and bonded. It's just there's at least 100,000 children they can't find. They can't find the sponsors. They can't find the children. And based on my 34 years experience, I'm telling you, some of these children are living a life of hell. They're going to be shown in pornographic movies. They're living with pedophiles. They're going to be in forced labor. It's just terrible how this administration, they claim to be humane, but this is the most inhumane administration I've ever seen.
Tom Homan, former acting ICE Director. Tom, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey, business owners, are you wondering how to grow your business? Do you need cash flow and a ready source for financing? Well, Signature Bank can help. Hi, Mike Gallagher here to let you know that Signature Bank's loan decisions are made locally by a team who knows your name, cares about your business, and is invested in your success. When you need advice about your business or even have a question, Signature Bank is there to help. There are no handoffs or call centers. This is a team that wants to get to know you and your business.